This is going to be your guide for using Grapploct in Pokemon Sword and Shield. There was initially a lot of hype with this Pokemon because of its signature move, Octolock. Foe can't switch, lowers defense and special defense every turn. That sounds pretty nuts. And people were like thinking a lot of theory crafting, like, alright, you set up the Octolock, you go into like a protect or a detect, and then you just start popping insane amounts of damage. Or what about in doubles? Being able to lock in a Pokemon in doubles and then have like supportive stalling while they're just getting weaker and weaker sounds really good, but in practice, Octolock isn't really that great. When you look at the stats on this Pokemon, it's not a super heavy-duty tank, but it also has good stats. Like, imagine if this Pokemon had 100 hit points, 90 defense, 90 special defense. Just pushing the tankiness a little bit more on this Pokemon makes it look a lot more broken, and it still has a 118 attack, so we are doing good damage, but it takes turns to set it up for each Pokemon. So I would rather give myself a bulk up. I'd rather give myself stats and then hit multiple Pokemon as they come in, instead of go through this weird cycle when we're not super tanky every time a Pokemon hits the field. Now, locking them in is nice, but if the opponent's committing to a Pokemon, they're probably going to go for something, and you want to shut that down before they get more out of it than you do, so they might not even be scared of the Octolock, they just come in, Dynamax, and then blow you up. Good move. Ended up not working out. I did want to talk about Topsy-Turvy because there's only one other evolutionary line that gets it. That's Malamar's. So now we have another Topsy-Turvy Pokemon. So you can splash that in on a Grapploct, and now we have like an anti-haze. That instead of just clearing stat boost, they lose it all and they become even more frail. So a Pokemon setting up defensive boosting is going to be really nice. And then it gets kind of weird if we're talking about Pokemon that are doing offensive boosting, because technically like Focus Sash, Topsy-Turvy can just save a game from being lost. So it's kind of like an anti-sweep, but it's also one of your 6 move slots being dedicated to something that isn't a guarantee. However, if you can pull it off, then that means that Pokemon's pretty much KO'd, or at least a free switch from there, and then Grapploct might be able to do something else on top of that. And then we have the abilities. So the ability selection on the Grapploct is pretty weird. When it comes to Limber, we don't really care about the speed drop because we're 42 speed, so I guess removing the 1 in 4 chance of sometimes getting paralyzed if the opponent is using Thunder Wave on you, that goes away. But when it comes to Technician, there's not a lot that Grapploct gets that uses Technician. So you have Rock Smash, 40 to 60. I'm going to skip on that because we have many better fighting stab boost options. Also, I did want to talk about the typing. It looks like it's going to be water fighting, but just a pure fighting Pokemon. That's like one of the first weird things people notice when it comes to this. Like, we have an Octopus. It rushes you down in the water when you encounter it during the story. It's a grappler, which is kind of cool, but it's just going to be a pure fighting. So flying, psychic, fairy weaknesses, dark, bug, rock resistances. And yeah, we don't have like anything else added from the water. We already talked about the stats. And then we look at this like, alright, 75, 80, 120, 75. So it's not like punch moves or anything are affected by that. And it's not like Technician has been buffed to work with 65 for Fang moves and other Pokemon. So we just really don't get a chance to use it. Revenge, well, the thing about Revenge is that it actually doubles damage if you've been hit. So then that cancels the damage buff that you get from the Technician ability. So that just leaves Circle Throw or Power Up Punch. But then Power Up Punch, like, you're not doing Power Up Punch for damage, and we have Bulk Up anyways, so I'd rather gain the defenses and try to do something else. So we have no synergy with either of our abilities on the Grapploct. That makes things kind of weird, but let's start getting into some movesets. So, we have Drain Punch, Bulk Up, Pain Split, Sucker Punch. I like this, especially because Pain Split has been removed as a tutor move. Like, there isn't a TR for Pain Split. That's another big problem that we see with Pokemon Sword and Shield. So hopefully Diamond Pearl remakes, they give us more tutor moves, they give back some of those options, even like Double Team, Toxic, just random removals from options of Pokemon has really plagued Generation 8, I feel, because it just feels like there's not an insane amount of diversity, even with all the TRs, even with the TM changes. It's like you just look at the base moveset for Pokemon, and there's not really a lot going on, and then everything becomes standard and generic from there. Like, we don't have Amnesia, can't curse Amnesia, pull any shenanigans like that. So, we're looking at this Pokemon, we have to go full defensive tank. We have to get set up against a defensive Pokemon. So this might actually be a case for the Octolock to be used if you want to just trap an opponent that can't do anything against you, and then you get full setup and then you just win. However, there's an ability called Shadow Tag that does this, and there's also a move called Mean Look that does this. So we have this extra gimmick of defense, special defense for the power creep and signature thing of this Pokemon, but the moveset and stat line doesn't really let it work, and then we get 5 move slot syndrome. What do we get rid of? It'd be a real shame if we set up all these bulk ups And then Drain Punch is like our, like, let's say we get rid of Sucker Punch, we have Octolock, we get set up against Pokemon, they bring in Ghost-type Pokemon, all that work was for nothing. I think we need the Pain Split, I think we need the setup, even with Drain Punch, because Drain Punch is going to be there for, like, the special attackers. We get hit with a big special attack, we survive it because of our, like, huge hit point investment, and then we just Drain Punch some of it back. We don't get all of it back because Drain Punch is infallible, so it's nice to have, like, damage options as you're setting up, and Pain Split isn't a perfect 50% heal, so we're getting a little bit of health from Pain Split, we're softening them up a bit, we find that early KO on the Drain Punch, and that's how we get that sustain to where we need it to be going on the Grapploct. However, when we get going, I don't see how this Pokemon can lose, because +4, +6 Sucker Punch is massive. We have Pain Split, so Pokemon's faster, they hit you, you Pain Split, they lose a chunk of their health, Sucker Punch KOs them. If Drain Punch isn't just an outright +6 KO that gives you most of your health back, and then you go into a loop. So Grapploct has good setup, and that's why I'm saying we have to run it as a full defensive tank. I've already said this about many Pokemon in Pokemon Sword and Shield, that if you, like, setup is kind of king right now, but also there's a ton of anti-setup that's going on. Like, you run into a sub-Butterfree, and your game is over because you chose to try to get Grapploct going, so sweepers are coming back in, and then maybe just straight bulk attacking is good, and Grapploct can kind of bulk attack, but that's the next moveset. Let's finish off this moveset first. I don't know. The metagame of Pokemon Sword and Shield is just super whack right now, to where, like, if you can get an in on this, it's going to work. If you're up against a just straightforward physical attacker, this is going to do really well, but just kind of shows, like, the one-dimensional, limited nature of a lot of the new Pokemon introduced, that you just kind of have to mono it. You know, I'm like, mono defense tank, mono special defense tank, and then you just do that and hope you get set up enough, and then you have enough, like, bulk to just kind of survive special attacks. So, damage calculations, here's Jolteon, max hit point invested, that's going to be Thunderbolt with choice specs, we survive. So we've got that going for us. Then we also have Rotom Heat. If it's an overheat from a non-choice specs, we're okay with just full hit point investment. If it's a choice specs, then things kind of get weird. So that's going to be 101 to 192, and then it's like, what happens if we put in, I don't know, 100 EVs? Start finding some survival right there, but it's not guaranteed. That takes away from our defensive setup, that takes away from potential offenses and stuff, but the Sucker Punch at +6 is huge damage, and once again, you're going to Pain Split anyways. So you Pain Split, Sucker Punch, that KOs most Pokemon, and even on the Jolteon, we can see Circle Throw, or whatever, like, you know, Drain Punch, other move options, Sucker Punch, just Drain Punch, Sucker Punch at damage kills. Now, I do know that Grapploct gets access to the Soak, and it's definitely worth talking about. The problem is, though, it doesn't help us out for any 5th move slot issue, that we have Fighting Move and Soak, or we have Fighting Move and Dark-type move. So when it comes to immunities, it's not really going to do anything, so we can't really set up with the Soak to try to expand our coverage anymore. That means we have to get rid of Pain Split, but then it's like, why, when we can just have Drain Punch for sustain? It gets kind of awkward. But the reason why I run movesets like this is because I love having the opportunity that, depending on the game state, your Pokemon, your opponent's remaining Pokemon, there are situations where Grapploct comes in, it gets a bulk up, and the opponent can't do anything about it, and you win. So I like those situations, and then it can snowball super hard. Like, it doesn't even have to be that the opponent doesn't have any answers to Grapploct. By the time they realize what's happening, their answer has already expired. That, say they had a very heavy special attacking Pokemon that would be able to two-shot you before you get set up, well, if they realize this 1 or 2 bulk ups too late, Pain Split, Sucker Punch, they're gone, and now they only have physical attackers, and this is already set up with a little bit of defense, and then Grapploct wins the game. So I like playing for that exploit. I like catching the opponent off guard for just those 1 or 2 turns, and then taking that into a setup win, but that's not how everyone plays, and Grapploct can actually make use of the Octolock by playing around that. So here's a use for Technician, here's some weird stuff that can happen, and this is what I mean by, like, trapping an opponent in. So this is weird. However, if you're going up against a dedicated defensive setup Pokemon, you Octolock them. And now that means they can't really do anything more for their defenses as you're power-up punching. So you halt their defensive gain where they're at, and then you're eventually going to hit +6 with a Stab, Technician, boosted move, and you're going to be able to wreck them. If it's a Ghost-type Pokemon like the Corsola, you Soak. And then you can still wreck them in time, and the point is, if they're a stalling Pokemon, you know, Toxic Stall, something like that, you rest. Infestation Stall, just something that isn't gaining any damage. If they're only going for defensive boost, they're only trying to, like, just wither you away, then you rest, you get rid of all that, and then you go back to power punching until they're dead. So that's like a weird thing that can happen with the Grapploct right here. Item, leftovers, because you don't need a Chesto Berry. But the problem is, this is for very specific Pokemon. This is a very specific stall breaking. However, if your team is having problem with these specific Pokemon or the state of the meta, then this Grapploct actually becomes usable. As for the effort value placement, it's kind of tough because, like, special defense, we've seen it, but then, like, there's a disparity right here. We can't bulk up into damage with this. That's another problem that happens when we add in the Octolock and we go for Soak. Like, it's kind of gimmicky, but it's also very effective. If this happened to one of my Pokemon, I wouldn't be happy. You know, like my Toxapex, I can only stockpile 3 times. Octolock's going to put me at -6 eventually. And then I'm in trouble because now our +6 Grapploct is in the game. But it doesn't have Sucker Punch. So you break a stall, you KO that Pokemon, and then you maybe take a hit, KO another Pokemon, and then it's over. So this Grapploct can go 2-0, or like 2 for 1, but it's in very specific situations. However, it is a really interesting moveset like that, and then you can play around with the defenses how you need to, you know, just kind of like maybe balance them out evenly. So I would go for Impish Nature, 80-ish, something like that. Actually, maybe even less because that gives us a big boost. So something like that is also going to look really nice. And it's like, all right, we're balanced. Maybe there's more physical attackers. Maybe there's more special attackers. Depends on the meta, because this is just a very specific meta response Grapploct. And it's one of the weird things that its moveset opens up to. So now let's just go and look at the offensive Grapploct, because this makes use of Technician since fighting type moves are weird. You either have Brick Break, Drain Punch for low-ish base power, or you have Close Combat to try to nuke the opponent, but it makes you weaker, and there's really no in-between. There isn't a Thunderbolt for fighting type moves, but you have Technician Circle Throw, which also forces the opponent to switch. So this is if you are running like a Circle Throw kind of strategy. If you're running this Grapploct, you will need the Stealth Rocks. It does play into the strategy really well. They come in, they take 12%, you Circle Throw them out, they take 12% when they come in. So that means you're actually in a position to where the opponent only needs to take about 75% of their health, which is doable when you have 118 attack, Adamant Nature, you're just bulking it out. That's why we have the Black Belt as well. We are putting everything into that Circle Throw to make sure Stealth Rock Circle Throw either KOs, or the next time they come in, they're already KO'd. And then we have coverage, Sucker Punch, that's really nice to finish off a weakened opponent, and then Ice Punch makes the coverage pretty ridiculous. So this doesn't have all of the type coverage for Generation 8, but hey, that's pretty solid. If we had like Waterfall or something, it makes it to where Whimsicott, which could be a problem, is not hit, and then we have less super effective hits, so that's a thing. And then Ground, yeah, Ground, Togekiss is problematic, so it's just not, like, you just go with the ice and then you get to hit some extra Pokemon. Like, any fairy combination that you need that ice typing for is going to be pretty nice. So Whimsicott, Togekiss, and yeah, I was looking at some of the other moveset things. The Ground would be Stomping Tantrum. So if you fail a Sucker Punch and then you land a Stomping Tantrum, it's going to get bonus damage, which is pretty nice. But Ice Punch, you got it. You should use it in this situation. Even though there isn't Garchomp, even though there isn't Dragonite, it just adds a lot of super effective hits because it's kind of weird with the Fighting and Dark. So we got that setup going, and then Pain Split, kind of just the same ideas, which brings us back to this Jolteon. So this is more what I was going for with Jolteon, while also just kind of like showing you guys how much damage that we take from things. So Circle Throw, that's just going to be massive right there. And the Sucker Punch is also significant levels of damage. So Circle Throw can KO frail, neutral, attacking Pokemon. If we mix this up into the Silvally, this is like a bulky analog kind of Pokemon. Let's go and change this to Grass so it's a neutral hit. That's still significant because anything that's slightly less tanky than a Silvally, it's going to go down with the double Stealth Rocks after Circle Throw switches it out, and then you still have like these sustain options, so it's like Pain Split, Sucker Punch, after all of this is still going to be a lot of damage as well, and then Grapploct just kind of hangs around and does things. I was going to say maybe go for the Muscle Band, because it does add 10% damage to your Sucker Punch, but I think the Black Belt Circle Throw is really just where you want to front load everything. And that's kind of it on the Grapploct. You know, like I said, there's probably some kind of doubles combo that people are out there running with the Octolock that might find some success, but I think it's just too slow. The power creep, the damage, the Dynamaxing, all these other things that happen with Grapploct, it's like, yeah, it just has stats, but just bulk stats don't really do too much in Pokemon anymore, so you have to set up, you have to get fancy, or you just have to run it down. Like, this is nice. This is good against all this, like, anti-setup that we're seeing right now, and you can circle throw out Pokemon. You need to have the Stealth Rocks, which does put you at disadvantage, but if you can make this work for a couple of rotations, then you're going to be in a good position, so this might catch some opponents off guard. And then, like I was showing with the Rotom, you know, Sucker Punch just creates a lot of kill combos. Getting +6 is much easier said than done, and does open up, like, some weird mix potential as well. Go high into special defense, have some defense as well. Maybe just go full special defense, but then that means it's hard to set up against physical Pokemon. Like, this is just your dedicated physical attacker comes in, you set up against them, they can't do anything to you, now you're in a much better situation. But if there is like an overwhelmingly powerful special attack, it just blows you up. That's not good. So that's why we did show that like 100-ish investment onto the special defense to make sure we survive things. So we could do something like this. Makes it a little less, like, it makes it more risky to set up, but it makes it less likely that you're going to get KO'd by, like, special attackers and you can still get going. That's a Pain Split Sucker Punch KO, that's a Drain Punch KO, and then you're surviving hits as well. So that's a thing. And I was trying to think about, like, what else Grapploct can do, because if it outspeeds the opponent, it finds a lot more success, but at 42 speed, you have to do a lot of weird things, like Sticky Web. So instead of going for Stealth Rocks, you're dedicating to a Sticky Web. That means you outspeed 85 base speed Pokemon at level 50 at the -1 speed if you have 76 speed EVs invested into this Pokemon. I think it's too niche to really matter. But then, like, anything slower than that, that's not, you know, speed invested, any bulky Pokemon that's in the 85 and under range, you're starting to outspeed them, which is really nice because that guarantees the Pain Split. That means you're going to have more damage on top of it, and that's kind of cool. But at the same time, Circle Throw is negative priority, so it doesn't really do too much for you, and I wouldn't want to break up this anymore to put in some speed, so I outspeed on a bulk up sometimes. You still have the Sucker Punch, so yeah, it's weird setup, but I think this is like the most you can get out of the Pokemon since its moveset kind of doesn't make sense. And even the synergy, it's like, oh, we got the Waterfall. We're not outspeeding, so we're not getting flinch, and we're also, as we've seen, it doesn't really add too much to the type coverage as well. Now, there needs to be one for the Galar Dex that would make things a lot more specific, but overall, it's just a good idea. It's like, yeah, that's some pretty solid coverage. So if you guys enjoyed the video, hope you have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.